Okay, we're going to review the Enlightenment Revolution Study Guide. I'm going to go pretty quick, but remember that you can rewind or fast forward or do whatever you need to do. So when we talk about Copernicus, what was his accomplishment? Copernicus is going to publish books on the heliocentric theory, which is a theory that believes that the sun is the center of the universe. And he's going to be significant because Copernicus is going to directly challenge the beliefs of the church, because the church is told this theory of the geocentric, where the earth is the center of the universe and the planets orbit around it. And Copernicus is going to say that's not right. So he's going to challenge the church. And as you all know, if you learned in science class, that the planets do orbit the sun, and it is the center of the universe. John Locke is going to believe that all people should have natural rights, and those natural rights are life, liberty, and the right to own property. Number 3, when we talk about Montesquieu, Montesquieu is going to argue for 3 different types of branches of government, which will be the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And what you need to remember about that is that Montesquieu is going to see this in English society, and he is going to talk about how they need to check and balance each other and then balance out the distribution of power so that one branch doesn't become more powerful than the other. How did Enlightenment ideals affect the United States? If you look at your notes, I teach the Enlightenment before the American Revolution, because if you didn't have Enlightenment philosophers from England and France talking about, getting away from absolute monarchies, that people, have the right for life, liberty, and property, that every man should have a certain amount of freedoms, you have to think about the Enlightenment words: reason, nature, progress, happiness, and liberty. Liberties are freedoms, and the Enlightenment is going to be a surge away from the monarchy, and establishing new types of government. You're going to have Thomas Paine, who's going to talk about how America needs to break away from Britain, and Enlightenment ideas are ultimately going to push those 13 colonies to break away from their mother country of Britain and start their own nation because of the injustices. That's one thing you need to think about, is that John Locke is going to say that if a government is not protecting your rights, then you have the right to revolt. And Rousseau will do the same thing, because he's going to believe in the social contract. So when you ask, how did Enlightenment ideals affect the United States, it's going to cause the United States to break away and form their own nation. What population made up the third estate? You have 97% of the population made up the third estate in France, and you have the bourgeoisie and the sans-culottes. And the bummer and the downside about the third estate is that a lot of them, like even the bourgeoisie, were upper class citizens or upper class people in France, but didn't have a say in the government. And the injustice of the third estate is that they're most of the population, but they have no say in the government, but they have to play by the rules and pay the taxes, and they're highly taxed, while the 2 other states are not receiving much aid or sending much tax money to the monarchy. Before the scientific revolution, 2 groups of people were authorities concerning knowledge. Who were they? You should know that this is the church and the monarch. When we talk about scientific revolution, it's going to prove or dispel a lot of the ideas that the church has been spreading for hundreds of years. How do Hobbes and Rousseau differ? Hobbes and Rousseau will both believe in the social contract, but Rousseau is going to have more of a different ideal on the government, how the leadership should be run. Hobbes is all about an absolute monarchy. He loves the idea of an absolute monarchy. He supports it. He believes that people are too dumb and stupid and rude to even run their own government. So he believes that there must be an absolute monarch in place. Also, what was the Stamp Act, and why did the colonists object to it? Well, if you're paying attention, Miss Cannon is on number 8. Stamp Act is going to be a paper tax on any type of paper product in the colonies. And what you need to understand about the Stamp Act and all the other acts that were placed upon the colonists is that it was an issue because the main concern was that you cannot have taxation, like us making us pay a tax, if we have no representation. So no taxation without representation used to be the main battle cry, or the main, motto for the colonists is, you cannot tax us if you don't allow us to be represented in your government and have a say. And the Stamp Act is going to solidify that. No taxation without representation. Individual who published a book on the heliocentric theory, Copernicus. Who created the first encyclopedia, Denis Diderot. And you need to know that, encyclopedia is a gathering of information and definitions and pictures and things that people have studied. The church is really not going to like this idea, because people are going to further expand their minds by reading dictionaries. What country did Joseph II come from? He's from Austria, and he was one of the most enlightened monarchs. But he is going to die, and then the nobility is going to change everything. But he is going to, I believe, get rid of serfdom and the death penalty, stop torturing. He's also going to give medicine and food to his poor people in his country. One other thing. Oh, no, I'm moving on. Number 12, sorry. Why did the French and Indian War lead to an increase in taxes in the colonies? What you have to understand is that the British and the colonists are going to fight against the French and the Native Americans. Even though they fight the war and the British are going to win, it's going to be very expensive, because the war is not just the French and Indian War in America, but it's also the 7 Years' War in Europe. And it's the same war, but they have two different names, and they're going on at that time. So Britain's fighting a war in two areas, and it's, as you've learned throughout the whole semester, it's very pricey to fight wars. And so they're going to be in debt. So the taxing on the colonists will go up so that they can kind of fill in that debt and try to make some money back and get rid of the debt that they have. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence, and why is it significant? Thomas Jefferson is going to be the individual to draft the Declaration of Independence. It's significant because this is when we tell Britain that you need to kick rocks and we're not going to be involved with you anymore. This is when the colonists, they've already sent grievances to King George III. He hasn't taken any heed to the things that they've asked him to change. So they decide, well, if you're not going to change your ways, then we will fully become independent. And they're going to declare this on July 4th, 1776, and they're going to tell them that we will be free. What is the fall of the Bastille, also known as the storming of Bastille, where it's going to happen in July 14th, and I believe it's 1789. And what's going to happen is that you remember that these French Third Estate members dealing with the National Assembly, they're going to storm the Bastille for weapons because they feel like King Louis XVI is plotting to attack them. And what they will do is take the commander who's protecting the door and cut off his head and stick it on a stake and march it around town, which we've already discussed several times how this is the Third Estate showing King Louis XVI that they mean business. Louis XVI is going to be put in more of an in-depth fear of the Third Estate. He's realizing that this revolution that he's trying to prevent is not going to be preventable, and that it is going to occur, and that the Third Estate wants change. What are the causes of the French Revolution? You have inequalities in the estates. So you have 97% of the population that has no say in the government, but is taxed on a regular basis and has to pay fees. You have a second and first estate who kind of pay taxes when they want to, or if they don't want to, they do not. You have a king who is a poor leader throwing parties and eating and drinking wine while many of his population is starving. You also have Enlightenment ideas. Most enlightened philosophers came from France. So these ideas of three branches of government, no monarchy, and maybe like some type of leader. Every man has the right for natural rights of life, liberty, and property. Also, you have to take in consideration that the French are going to see that the Americans have broken away from their monarch, and they are going to want to do something very similar. What was geocentric and heliocentric? You should know geocentric, think about geography and how geography deals with the earth. Geocentric is the theory of the earth being the center of the universe. The heliocentric theory is the sun being the center of the universe. John Locke, Rousseau, and Adam Smith. I'm going to let you answer this question on your own, number 17, and I will go over it tomorrow if you have a question. The enlightened despots. You need to remember that they are the three enlightened monarchs that you learned about. And when I look at your study guide tomorrow, you need to have all three of them on there. Catherine the Great, Frederick II, and Joseph II. And you need to make sure you have those on your paper and describe tomorrow. There's only one of them who was more enlightened than the others. Who are the bourgeoisie, the doctors, the lawyers, the upper class people in the third estate, which kind of doesn't make a lot of sense because you're like upper class. Well, they need to be up there with the nobility. They're not up there with the nobility, but they live well. They just don't have any rights in the government, just like the rest of the third estate, commoners. The guillotine is the new method of execution in France during the Revolution. What is a social contract? A social contract is an agreement between a leader and the people, and the people give up certain rights or certain liberties. Certain liberties in exchange for protection. And what the leadership does, or the monarchy, or whoever's in charge, is going to protect them from harm and also protect their rights. If their rights are not protected, then they are able to throw out or revolutionize against that leader. What is a salon? It is a place where people gathered during the Enlightenment to share intellectual ideas on government, politics, and education. Remember that term we coined, social thinking. Social thinking occurred in salons. What is the Constitution? The Constitution is a document that is drafted, and it is the establishment of our laws and protocol for our new nation, which is known as the United States of America. Why is it significant? We still use it today. And it set the foreground for us to build our government and the ideal of federalism, which is a blend of government between states and the nation, the national level. When we talk about Thomas Paine's common sense, you have to remember that Thomas Paine is going to talk about Britain and America and how there's a struggle between them on a regular basis, and how America needs to go ahead and break free from its mother who only wants to give it milk to drink. And if you know anything about babies can't drink milk forever. They must eat meat and other foods to benefit their life and to grow. And Thomas Paine is going to discuss this in depth. Now, this is a review of your study guide. Please take a listen. Make sure that you study this evening because your test is going to be a little difficult. Have a great evening.